Xin được chào mừng tất cả mọi người đã đến với chuyên mục đọc light novel của Kinh Comic 3T Entertainment. Và mình là Mega, sẽ là người đồng hành cùng với tất cả mọi người trong chuyên mục này. Thay mặt toàn thể đội ngũ 3T, cảm ơn tất cả mọi người vì đã click vào đường link để theo dõi sự kiện này. Đó là một sự ủng hộ rất to lớn mà bọn mình vô cùng trân quý. Thay mặt toàn thể đội ngũ 3T, Mega xin chân thành cảm ơn tất cả mọi người. Mong là chúng ta sẽ cùng đồng hành với nhau trong một thời gian thật là dài sau này nha. Thì có lẽ tất cả những gì mà bọn mình đăng tải trong thời gian qua cũng đã đủ để khiến cho mọi người biết được là Pate Entertainment là gì rồi. Thì nhân đây cũng xin đại diện toàn thể đội ngũ, mình xin được tự giới thiệu lại. Thì Pate Entertainment là một hội nhóm chuyên sáng tác truyện tranh cũng như là light novel và đăng tải lên các nền tảng mạng xã hội và trang web chính thức của bọn mình. Thì hôm nay sẽ là buổi đầu tiên, cũng là buổi công chiếu và ra mắt The Rise of Pan. Có lẽ là chúng ta sẽ không để mọi người chờ lâu nữa mà mình sẽ cùng nhau đi tìm kinh là gì luôn nào ha. Mong là tất cả mọi người đều đã chuẩn bị cho mình một vị trí ngồi thật đẹp, một thứ thức uống thật ngon, cùng với một không gian yên tĩnh bên cạnh người thân và gia đình. Vậy thì bây giờ chúng ta sẽ cùng nhau đi tìm kinh là gì thôi nào. Let's go.
Since ancient times, in every age that has existed, humans have always been one of the species dominating the world. As a species that is constantly developing and creating massive civilizations, until now, the value and place of human society have been immeasurable. But with human existence and development, there are still creatures from the darkest and most mysterious lands besides that. Over millions of years of existence, these creatures have been recognized, and each species has had its way of growth and created an undeniable foothold. Along with humans, they have developed, they have mastered nature and avoided enormous conflicts with humanity. Most species choose the path of peaceful coexistence with humans and build their own territories. In parallel with these positive recognitions, a large number of species with higher level intelligence raise a question. When a species grows to a higher level and gradually becomes able to dominate the food chain, what will be the fate of those species that are in the dominant position? Humans have long occupied that peak, and they seem to take it for granted and never be changed. A peaceful coexistence, if it exists, is just only temporary, and conflicts are likely to break out at any time. History has shown that the emergence of mutant species and the superior evolution in any given area is always the result of rapid extinction of their less developed brethren. So over time and with the change of the world, there are development of species that resonate well with other species, but sometimes probably change them into harmful species. At that time, humans had to choose their own path to adapt or exterminate them. The story takes place in Thượng a peaceful village at the edge of the Gailan forest. Day by day, the sound of the wind, the gurgle of water flow, and animals calling each other echoes around. The voices of sparse people here suddenly became out of tune. The village is not big, but has existed for hundreds of years. The villagers are just over 100 people. Their livelihood relies on the forest, cultivating and raising livestock. They live in harmony with the forest, getting just enough to eat and making enough food for their lives in the winter. People in the village have fairly closed lives to the outside society. Many generations are in the forest, living in the forest. Going out of the forest means that they will lose their protection. On the contrary, they also do not allow strangers to set foot here for fear that someone will bring danger to the villagers as well as destroy the inherent peace in their forest. Every villager may be deemed a crack hunter. With a small population and a large number of wild animals, hunting has become a regular activity of the village youngsters. But that is the story of the past. The hunter, with one hand, raises the bow and the other pulls the arrow. Just hear a wind howling and the arrow strikes through the target. The speed of the arrow was so fast that the rabbit's body was thrown a long distance. Blood oozed out of the wound, and a scarlet stream permeated the ground. The rabbit was dying, lying motionless, and leaving to the hunter to come to pick up the end product. Seeing a movement on the ground, another shadow quickly flew up. It was a bird with white feathers that witnessed the scene of the bloodshed. It flapped its wings and hurried away from this village to save its life. The hunter's shadow rushingly runs to a place that has a clear sky so as not to be obstructed by the foliage. That the bow was stretched once more. The sunlight illuminated the hands that were somewhat sturdy but could not hide their slenderness. The arrow flies and destroys one more moving target. The bird was hit and immediately lost its resistance. The bird's wings just was back down, so it fluttered a little and then fell straight to the ground as its fate. The owner of those arrows is a young girl about 16 or 17 years old. The big round eyes and bright smile paint a genuineness and sincerity on her face. Tan skin with bold colors of the wind and sand in the highlands. She wears a light green dress which helps her to easily hide in the bushes waiting for her prey, and most of all, it is her favorite color, the color of the mountains. Despite her young age, Ari is highly appreciated by the villagers for her ability in using bow and arrow. She is a young, excellent archer of Tungtu village. Ari frowns and picks up the rabbit she has just shot down. A whole morning of hunting only returns meager prey, but still lucky to have it. A few years ago, there were more rodents in this forest than weeds. Now, to be able to accidentally encounter a rabbit at the edge of the forest is almost rare. More and more animals are hiding further inside the forest and are harder to find. Each of Ari's hunting trips is now like a search for fortune. How lucky it is, got a rotisserie dish for our kids. It can be said that the meager luck finally smiles on her. On the way back, she still does not forget to look at the familiar scenery that is deeply imprinted in her subconscious. It has not changed much since she was born, but for some reason, she still doesn't get fed of looking at it. Had never been to another land, so in Ari's small world, only here has such a clear blue sky, white clouds swooping down away to the ground so low as if being able to reach out and take a cluster from them. The familiar, beautiful surroundings once again seem to hypnotize the young girl. The horse below yawns repeatedly and brings its owner back to the village by habit on the old way. It probably gets used to an irresponsible owner. The neigh and the hooves sound hurriedly getting closer and closer. At the edge of the forest, rising a thin layer of dust, a beefy horse runs ahead towards the village gate. The gloaming of sunset, which is about to end, still shines long streaks of glitter on the horse's wet and jet black back. On its back, Ari grips the reins firmly. The horse's footprints pulls a long slide close to the gate. Ari is back! The children call out to Ari. The scene of her beloved village appears behind the children. Tungtu village originated from a group of nomads, originally with only about 10 houses gathering together, living in the forest and relying on each other to develop. Then, over the course of 100 years, from 10 families to dozens of homes, so many old generations have gone, but the new generations have quickly filled all the empty spaces of the whole village. Yep! Ari quickly jumps off the horse and heaves a sigh of relief. She wipes her sweaty forehead with her hand, smiles, and strides quickly toward the children. The children surrounding Ari, Their eyes are sparkling with excitement. Ari quickly removes hunted animals, takes them up in both hands, and shakes them with a titter face and tries to explain. Sorry guys, this is all for today. Ari shows them a small hare and a bird. It's okay. The two children quickly respond and delightfully receive Ari's gift in a very carefree way. Because compared to the food, welcoming the majestic Ari back after each day is the most interesting thing. Ari also cannot stay here for long. She hastily pats the heads of the two youngest children and then greets them all to quickly get to the place she needs to go. Without a doubt, the number of wild animals is dwindling. For almost 2 years, every hunter returned with a gloomy face and heavy sighs. The winter is coming, the day will be shorter, and frost will weave through everywhere. In this freezing cold, it is hard for the villagers to find prey. Not to mention, the number of elderly and children are also increasing, as that way, food storage cannot be held on anymore. No, we can't go on like this. There has to be some way. Quickly tying the reins to the tree, Ari hurriedly heads to a small house at the end of the village. That is the direction of the house of the village's doctor. A small house nestles among long rows of green trees. In front of the house, there is a small garden planted with a few high medicinal bushes along rows of undulating mounds. The last rays of the sunlight help Ari faintly see small trails of smoke. The air around it smells like something burning. The nearer Ari approaches, the more she smells this familiar scent. That's it, which contains the warm, slightly spicy of the sage's resin, mixed with the bitter and wild of the mountains. Year-round in Tungtu village, villagers often burn grass every dusk as a spiritual ritual and to repel insects. That smell slightly penetrates Ari's nose. She snorts twice and then loudly calls, "Hey, doctor!" A glimpse of a young man turned around, about 25 or 26-year-old. He sits hunched over. He busily collects something with his hands. His face is square, his smile is friendly, and his eyes are shining under his bushy eyebrows. His thick lips make people feel that he is a trustworthy person. "Hi, Ari." The doctor clears his throat, his hands busily picking up a few more bundles of sage that had been dried on the ground, then ties them into bunches and lines them into the house wall. He leans to his feet, shakes his shirt lightly, and walks briskly. "How was your hunt?" Ari approaches the young doctor and leans on his chin thoughtfully. "Our forest status quo is not very good. The number of animals has decreased. In this situation, there won't be anything left to hunt." The doctor replies seriously. "I don't have a way, but this morning I learned that the mages of Van Guang Pagoda are going to pass by our village." Mentioning about Van Guang Pagoda, this is a transcontinental magic corporation with its headquarters and many branches around the world. Their mages are extremely famous and highly regarded by the federal government. They are in a very high position, and there are also many super-duper mages there. Obviously, it is very difficult for simple people like us to meet and approach them. Ari's eyes widen in surprise when she hears what he just told her. She asks again in an excited and curious voice, "Really? But why do they pass by here?" The doctor says slowly, "I have heard that it's their trip. If we're lucky, we can ask them to help us." Receiving such unexpected information, Ari exclaimed, "Great! If the mages lend a helping hand, there will be nothing to worry about getting rid of the monsters." But it's very expensive to hire them. Ari is happy for a moment, then immediately slacks again. Seeing it, the doctor gives her advice. "You should tell the village chief and let him decide." "Okay, I'll consider it." Ari's voice is turned down, so the doctor has to carefully listen as she is whispering to herself. After a few minutes of putting on her thinking cap about it, She still cannot come up with a better idea. Ari finally agrees with the doctor's advice. She nods a few times, lets out a sigh of determination, turns to say goodbye, and then gets on her horse and leaves the doctor's house. Standing looking at Ari wondering for a while, then watching her leave, the doctor could only shake his head, smiles, and clucks his tongue. Yeah! Ari shoves her legs into the horse's side, causing it to neigh in pain. The horse narrows its eyes and its forelegs rush away, pounding on the road. Ari cannot hide her excitement now. The young girl spurs her horse faster and faster. She is sure that as long as she meets the mages of Bangguang Pagoda, Ari and the villagers will find decisive help. Ari's heart seems to ring in her chest. Soon, the peaceful days of the past will return, and the villagers will sing songs of gratitude for God's sake instead of drowning in constant thoughts about the hunger like now. It won't last much longer, Ari talks to herself. The horse stops in front of a familiar mound in the middle of a narrow slope about 10 meters long. Ari quickly jumps down. The horse stands untied to one side, wandering to eat the weeds around the edge of the road. Ari is skipping along in zigzag footsteps on the slope, mumbling a few unknown chants. On both sides of the path, large trees stand still along the path. There is only the rustling sound of the leaves being rushed by the wind as if a reply in harmony with the innocent girl's voice below. The place where Ari is heading towards is the top of a small hill sloping gently, surrounded by lush trees. There is a small path leading to the top. The ground is worn down with no grass growing, revealing small rocks below. The shape of a house gradually appears when Ari comes closer. It's a tree house, the most valuable fortune of each Thungtu villager. After a house was completed, with unique construction techniques and the mystic arts of Ari's ancestors, they would give their descendants houses that had been blessed. These houses have the ability to protect Thungtu people from insects, wild animals, and dangers from hostile forces of evil spirits. It is built on a huge, strong, and old tree trunk as a solid pillar for the house. From a distance, it looks like a giant bird's nest that can accommodate up to more than a dozen people, not less. The house is connected to below by an ascending staircase, which is carved on a large brown tree trunk to form a ladder placed close to the main tree to climb up the porch. Along the two sides of the ladder, a few small bells are hung. This house is the workplace of the village chief. He usually spends all day here, sometimes even staying to work and craft some new models of labor tools for the whole village. The position of this house is near the center of the village, on highest ground where the chief can observe all the details of changes in their territory. In the main room of that house, there is only a man sitting on the floor. His skin darkened due to a lifetime of being soaked by the rain and sun, and all over his body is covered with rock-hard muscles. He has a muscular bare chest. His dark skin looks very virile, and time has stamped the deep furrows on his face and forehead. There is an elongated wooden stick in his hand resting on his quite crumpled and dirty pants, and the other hand is giving very sharp shavings with a small knife. The sound of separating a piece of wood from the trunk is very ear-catching. Cut by cut, one end of the stick sharpened carefully. The wood chips are removed from the body of the stick by the blade and landed. The floor is already full of wood mites. The sharp harpoon head is also gradually formed, which is probably a light weapon or a kind of fish-piercing javelin. He sits intently like that until a sound breaks a silent atmosphere, and his train of thought is suddenly interrupted by that voice. "Dad, big news, big news!" It is Ari's voice coming from the outside. Beneath the ground comes an eager female voice with excitement. The sound is coming through the window to the dark-skinned middle-aged man's ears. Without waiting for her father's reply, Ari quickly climbs up from the outside and hunches over by the window. She reaches inside to tell her father about what she has just heard. "Dad, the mages of Vanguang Pagoda are going to pass through our village. Can we hire them to kill monsters?" Still looking down at his hand, without any change in emotion, Ari's father says slowly, "Of course not." The moment when the first word is emphasized and the next ones are uttered, it makes Ari's heart jump. Why? Ari quite misses out after hearing her father. She looks at her father as if begging. The village chief immediately explains to his little daughter, "We have a rule that outsiders are not allowed to enter the village. We will not know if they're good or bad. Letting a bunch of strangers in here is dangerous and could affect the entire forest. Are you able to take on all responsibilities?" He continues, "Besides, our budget isn't enough to spend on such expensive things. We're in a predicament. You know better than anyone. Forget that idea." This isn't the first time Ari has heard her father talk about these things. Every time she mentions the outside help, her father would once again patiently repeat to her with the same reasons. Although Ari was raised by her father, she still hasn't understood his decisions until now. Ari sullenly tries to convince once more. "But Dad, now the monsters have seriously destroyed the forest. I hunted all day and didn't get much. I'm afraid it won't be long before the whole forest will be empty. Then everyone will starve to death." He does not glance at Ari. The chief calmly says to her, "Let me handle that. Besides, you also go back and forth in the forest less. That's not where you should go now." As if ignoring her father's suggestion, Ari still does not give up and tries to persuade in another direction. "How long are you going to wait? At least let me join the team. I will help everyone defeat those monsters." With a face full of expectation, Ari's words are filled with excitement and confidence, as if she wants to rush out to fight the monsters with her bow immediately. "You idiot!" The village chief runs out of patience. He speaks up to stop the excitement of his daughter, who is just a spring chicken. Slightly impatient and explaining to his wayward daughter, he stands up, brushes away the remaining wood chips from his pants, and turns to look directly at her and says firmly, "I repeat for the last time, this is an adult matter. You shouldn't interfere with it. Just do things that children same your age do. Don't bring this up again. You get it?" As a mild warning, he knows better than anyone how dangerous it is for everyone to face such a thing that teenagers like Ari shouldn't involve. He is worried about his villagers and worried about his little girl he loved more than anyone else. Noticing the firmness of her father's words, knowing that she could not continue to persuade, Ari rolls her gaze, not daring to say more than just hesitantly let out the word, "Got it," and then reluctantly left. The old saying, "A leopard can't change his spots," it's not wrong at all. There is no way that Ari can give up so easily. Leaving is leaving, but it does not mean that she will give up the idea of asking for the mage's help. At this age, the girls just like to do what they want. Even more, she lives in the mountain area, preferring freedom, and her temperament is quite nutty. Since the day she heard that Vanguang Pagoda mage group could pass through her village, there is not a day when Ari didn't ride out to the hill and looked into the distance, longing to see the figure of the mage group. But row on row of mountains, the distant horizon is still empty. No people, only trees and grasses remain the same as every day. And when will she see them? On a usual day, Ari rides her horse to the familiar place to wait, her small mouth busy fighting with the sugar cane she has just broken. Ari looks far away at the vast sky. Beneath the mountains and forests are wild and interminable, up and down like giant cotton blankets piled on the ground. The green trees and grass on the ground match with the deep blue sky, showing off their beauty. Looking at the beautiful landscape in front of her, Ari remembers her father once saying, "All human wisdom is summed up in two words, waiting and hoping." Even though Ari knows her own wisdom is lacking, but the other two things she has in abundance. After losing in thought, she exclaims, "Oh, sugarcane is so sweet." Although not too wise, Ari is proactive and energetic. She doesn't only stand still to expect. Ari also often combines the hunting trip to go to the surrounding areas to search for the major sign and find some food. She still hoped she could find some trace, even if it was just a few horse footprints or wheel prints. Then whatever comes, the little food Ari aimed for was also revealed. It is constantly moving, a white rabbit, run at full speed, gently evading the sharp arrows launched by Ari. From the moment it becomes Ari's target, the rabbit escapes death 3 times. Annoying at how many arrows the rabbit could still escape, Ari cries out in misery, "Food! Stand there! Stop running!" Of course, none of the animals volunteers to consider themselves food for another species, so even Ari shouts herself hoarse, it wouldn't stop. The rabbit has flicked away from Ari's eyesight, successfully escapes, and maybe it can survive for a while longer. At the same time, right under a tree, the noonday sun through the tree canopy fell right in front of the boy, waking up a teenager who is a homeless man. He raises his hand, preventing glare by blocking the rays of the sun. His face is still lethargic. The soul is faint right, has not yet gathered its wits, and says vaguely, "Just take a nap and the sun is already on my head." After a short sleep, the rumpled red lap of his shirt is untidy, sloppy on him like a thin blanket. The white clothes cannot keep their neat appearance, but it also seems to be understandable with a traveler. Slightly lazily turning around, he reaches into the bag near him, takes out the familiar map, looks at it a bit, and thinks about the next direction. This map is a bit old and worn over time due to being used many times. He looks at it briefly, and then he has a monologue to himself. It is said that if I pass this forest, I can reach the city of Labanda. The sun rose up high. Let's go! In the middle of the green forest without the sound of birds, Doong's voice sounded lonely. Doong sits up on his hands, brushes his back to clean some dust, struggles to pack up his belongings, and then departs. Suddenly, as soon as he sits up, there is a rustling sound from the bushes behind him. Doong wonders, turning his head to look in the direction of the sound. At that moment, Ari almost reaches the rabbit. Watching the rabbit leap into the nearby bushes, Ari does not hesitate to immediately raise her bow to aim at it. "Well, well, hide in the bush. You can never escape me, bunny." In a tree, a green parrot is cavalierly screeching. It calmly watches Ari's movements just below and never minds it might be the next target. Watching the movement of the bush, judging the next direction, Ari confidently lets go of the arrow. Swish! The arrow tires the wind and rushes towards the target. But where the arrow flew is not the body of the cunning rabbit. Just in time to see the god of death launch a pass right next to Doong's ear. Oops! Ari was scared to death when she saw her arrow strike a man sleeping behind the bush. Ouch! Surprisingly, when the arrow was about to pierce that boy's head, he seemed to have an eye behind his back to detect it, so he tilted his head and dodged it. Twang! A sharp arrow ignored the young boy and shot straight into the tree trunk, shaking violently. Doong's forehead starts to sweat drop by drop. He almost thinks that he had rested in peace right there after a few seconds of struggling under the tree. Doong slowly turns his head, staring intently at the arrow. his eyes full of horror and scrutiny, and he hunches over and gasps heavily. It took a few seconds for him to stammer his first words. Who did this? Doong stands up and goes to pull the arrow from the tree trunk. His heart still wildly danced inside his chest. After minutes of terror feeling, his fear immediately turned to anger. Breathing heavily, and he shouted, "What the hell? I have just opened my eyes. That was a close shave." By now, Ari is unable to hide anymore. She frantically leads her horse out of the bushes, timidly heading towards Doong. When all are facing each other, Ari quickly kneels on her knees, pleads with a regretted face, and pulls the horse's head to make a signal while whispering, "Keep your head down." The horse is also very cooperative with its owner, lying down, lowering his head and giving a tender look to Doong. At this time, Ari and her horse look like ducks in a thunderstorm. She hastily asks, "I'm sorry. I was hunting and a rabbit suddenly jumped on here. I didn't know where you were. Are you okay?" The horse turns its head to look at Ari, then looks back at Doong and nods as if to confirm its owner's words. As soon as she sees Doong is still unharmed, Ari sighs with relief, hoping that this young man in front of her does not make it difficult for her. Anyway, there's already so much trouble. She doesn't know what will happen if her father knows about this. Seeing the sincerity of the horse and its owner in front of him makes Doong's anger subside. And at the same time, he realizes that the owner of the arrow is just a girl around his age anyway. He thinks that he's a generous person, and he is still fine, so everything can be ignored. At this time, he reaches out his hand and returns the arrow that nearly took his life back to Ari. His tone is somewhat softer. "Almost died, but it's okay now. Here's your stuff." Ari receives the arrow in return, and she sends Doong profuse apologies. "Sorry, really sorry." Seeing that everything seems to go smoothly, her mood is relieved, and knowing that Doong is not a fastidious person. Ari observes Doong more closely and then asks him more. "Well, what a wonderful man you are. How did you avoid my arrow?" Doong smiles carefully while answering the question and introducing himself. "Haha, it's not a problem, because I'm a mage." For a moment, all emotions on Ari's face are frozen. She opens her eyes wide, staring at Doong unblinking, her mouth hanging open. Without missing another second, Ari immediately falls to her knees. Her head bows as slow as possible, as if she hates herself for not being able to bow any lower to show her sincerity. Her voice is already loud, now becomes even louder and clearer, quickly saying what she has prepared all these days. "Help us destroy the monsters, please! My village depends on this forest, but recently the forest has been taken over by a bunch of monsters. They have swept away almost all of our food source, and now our rations have run out." After saying that, she quickly catches a big breath in her mouth and continues. "The monsters are so strong and aggressive that the villagers can't fight back. While I was very confused, I accidentally heard that the mages from the famous Association of Magic, Van Guang Pagoda, are traveling to the south and about to pass by. So I purposely waited here. I was incredibly lucky to meet you. You must be a good guy sending from the heavens. Please assist us in fighting the monsters and saving the villagers. We are extremely grateful and will engrave you in our hearts, eternally grateful to you." Ari is a girl with no unique ability to use the power of words to move other people's views, so she chooses the method of using the number of words to make the other person overwhelmed to the point of stupor and have to agree with her words. It is unknown whether he agreed, but based on the overwhelming stupor, it seems she has succeeded. The atmosphere had been silent for a long time. Doong's ears had not stopped ringing due to the hiss of the arrow, but his eardrums vibrated again when he had to listen to Ari lay open. Doong still could not understand anything from her words. In his head, he draws a blank. Monster, Wangguang Pagoda, what is this? Just woke up? Doong is still not perky. He was almost killed by a girl, and now she is earnestly begging, kneeling on the ground right in front of him. The two of them looked very strange. He also wanted this trouble to end quickly. Doong tries to regain his composure to clarify the situation. Wait a minute, who did you tell to take the journey to the south? Doong's voice sounded with surprise. Ari looks up and smiles, but she still innocently replies, It's the mage of the Association of Magic, Banguang Pagoda. Banguang Pagoda? When he hears it, Doong realizes that Ari was mistaken. Doong immediately grabs the bag without any thought and puts it on his shoulder, planning to run away. He quickly says, You're wrong, I'm just passing by. But Ari is even faster. Doong just moves a little. She leans forward with a speed like a leopard. Her arms like the front limbs of predatory animals, circling around to hold his legs. Doong is like a poor prey pinned in the leg by the iron fangs of the hunter and is unable to move. Ari shouts, Wait! Wait! Trying to hold on to the only chains, shouting while holding Doong's leg, determined not to lose the village's savior. Doong tries to move his foot forward bit by bit, but Ari also tries to pull against it. The boy takes a step. She also pulled another step. No one gives up, and soon Ari's body leaves a trail long on the ground. Finally, facing Doong's determination, Ari has to take her ace. The girl ventures to shout, If you help me, I will pay you 100 gold coins. Boom! Doong is shocked. The sentence, like a thunderbolt, like a whirlwind, hit Doong's heart. That scream goes deep into his ear, passes through his eardrum, and pierces straight into his mind, and then his foot starts slowly faltering. Feeling that the steps of the boy in front of her were no longer fierce, Ari grabbed the chains and continued showing her pitiful look. You better save a life than constructing 7 towers. How can you let our village all die, sir? Doong thinks to himself. He is sure Ari had mistaken himself for some powerful mages. But somehow, the price Ari offered is heavier than any excuse Doong wants to refuse. But I'm not... 200 gold coins! Getting that deal from Ari makes Doong instantly realize that it is embarrassing to refuse such a sincere girl. Furthermore, accepting a make-living offer on such a long journey is a really straightforward thing to understand and a commendable thing to do. Seemingly satisfied with the above argument, Doong tries to suppress the complacency in his heart and quickly strode energetically toward the wretched village. Finally getting Doong's consent, Ari happily leads Doong deeper into the village. Fearing that the villagers will discover the presence of a stranger, Ari leads Doong on a deserted road that she used to utilize to sneak out of the village, successfully bringing Doong into her base. As she walks, she is worrying that the person behind her will suddenly change his mind, so sometimes she glances back and forth to see if Doong is still behind her or not. Doong in the back keeps mumbling, So lucked out, so lucked out. He can't help thinking of all the things he could buy with that money. Being lost in thought, he is unconcerned with which path the girl in front will lead him. Until he finds himself on a bridge which is 10 meters above the ground. He returns to his senses to observe the strange structures around him. In front of Doong's eyes, a small house appears. The house is made entirely of wood. The special thing is that somehow, a large tree pierces through it and continues to grow without affecting it. A strange but incomprehensibly harmonious combination. We have guests, everyone, Ari says, interrupting Doong's thinking. The two get into the house in turn. As soon as she steps inside, Ari quickly introduces Doong to everyone. This is the mage I just invited. His name is, Doong in the back takes a step forward, smiles friendly, and waves his hand to everyone. Hey guys, I'm Doong. Ari beside him at this moment can only laugh and scratch her head, trying to hide her unreliability. The whole house has only one room. The decoration is quite simple, but still fully furnished. It seems that this is not someone's daily living space, but just a place for people to gather. Phew, phew. A pair of lips part, letting out a faint puff of smoke. In a medium-sized room, on the opposite side of Doong and Ari, 3 people are staring at them with 6 eyes. The closest to the 2 is a girl with an active appearance. She is sitting cross-legged on a wooden bed. Her body is somewhat strong and sturdy. She is wearing a sleeveless shirt that exposed her strong arms, and her right hand is gripping a cigarette. She takes a puff, then a faint smoke is released and skimming over her confident face with unique purple hair. The smoke stands out and then gradually disappears. She doesn't respond to Doong's greeting, but just gives him an appraising look, then returns to Ari and asks, "Well, this is the one you always talk about, huh, Ari?" Behind the purple girl is another one who appears to be younger, with quite similar face, shoulder-length black hair, and wearing the same kind of dress with 2 black-blue colors. This person stands her back to the window, staring at Doong as if she is uninterested in him. Her body is a little smaller, but no less powerful. She stands with her back to the window still, her eyes wondering as if she has no curiosity about him. "Greetings, sir," the mage. The one who has just welcomed Doong is the doctor who told Ari about the mage group of Ban Guang Pagoda. This guy is carrying a stack of books and scrolls that appear to be medical documents, and the doctor's face still has the same gentle and kind expression as the first time he appeared, with a bright smile as if welcoming with a look of concern and a little surprised by Doong's appearance. Trying to extend his chubby hand to Doong, the doctor waits for a handshake with a friendly face. "Hello, hello." Doong replies and reaches out to squeeze the doctor's hand. "Hello, I'm the doctor at this village." The doctor, still keeping the warmth as usual, smiles back. They talk to each other with a great goodwill at the first meeting. The doctor continues to show his hospitality and friendliness by enthusiastically taking on the role of a bridge, introducing the people who are in the house. To ease Doong's awkwardness, he points at the purple shirt girl and then the dark blue shirt girl and says, "Let me introduce Nick and her sister, Rin. Rin's forte is whipping, and Nick specializes in swords. These 2 girls are siblings, and the things they carry are also their forte weapons." From the moment Doong enters the house, he conveniently takes a glance around the house. Looking at them from the beginning, he already guesses a little about this. This pair of sisters seem quite contrasting. The older sister looks energetic and strong, and her words certainly carry weight. And the younger sister looks completely opposite, cold and less talkative. At least, since Doong walked in here, she hasn't opened her mouth once. Everyone has their own characteristics, but their abilities are certainly not trivial. Thinking so, he turns his eyes to the 2 sisters to greet them. Nick still nods slightly in response to the stranger's gaze, but Rin doesn't. She shows a winterly smile, nodding in return with a gaze filled with strong confidence. Ari is also excited to introduce herself. She confidently pats her chest and says her name. "I'm Ari. I use a bow and arrow, and I can hit a moving target 100 meters away. We will go with you into the forest to destroy the bad Pan." Referring to Pan, Doong immediately hits the main issue. "Tell me more about that creature. When did they show up in the forest?" The mood in the room changes abruptly. Ari suddenly feels her heart pounding rapidly, and she begins to speak. "Pan is a mischievous species that has lived in the forest right next to our village for a long time. They have received tributes from our forefathers in return for preserving the forest resources. Since the beginning of time, villagers have had a close connection with the forest, and we had relied on it for a variety of necessities. But in a recent half year, the Pans have begun to change." Ari frowns. Seemingly, she is searching through her brief teenage memories. "Degenerate, aggressive, and turn to eat people in the village." Currently, most of the animals in the forest have been eaten by them, and they can come down to the village to eat us too. The villagers have organized many attacks, but the Pen Lord is very strong. Normal weapons can't hurt it. Moreover, there are many little pans, and we have failed consecutively. So I would like to ask for the mage to help us. Ari ends her words and turns her pitiful gaze to Doong as a plea, creating a perfect ending that moves the listener's heart. After listening, Doong has a basic grasp of their situation and the problem need to be solved. He has also figured out a bit of a solution and how to deal with it, but it will depend on what he gets. So he asks Ari again about the remuneration she promised earlier. I see, but there's a little problem. The promise of the reward. Before Doong finishes the sentence, Ari is like a leech touching lime. She is sitting still, suddenly startled, and shouts to cut Doong's words. That! Of course, haha! She keeps stammering and is unable to answer clearly. I'm sure about that. Ari chuckles simperingly, stands up, and swiftly draws everyone out, leaving Doong alone in the house, as if scared that Doong and others may ask further questions. You can rest here, she asks as she walks away, smiling. We'll be on our way tomorrow morning. With this expression on her face, everyone could see that there was a problem. The doctor had just been pushed out, could only look at her from behind and call her softly, reprimanding. Ari. Ari quickly closes the door completely without forgetting to say the last greeting. We don't bother anymore. Bam! The door closes, and Doong is left inside. He must be confused again right now. Phew, it's finally over. Standing in front of the house, the daughter of the chief heaves a sigh of relief and leans against the door to let her breath out as if she had just faced her father's wrath. The other three could only bewilderedly stand around Ari on the suspension bridge leading to the village. No one understands what happened. Some of them had not said a word to the mage, and something as important as tomorrow's battle plan also has not been discussed. The three people immediately raised doubts about the two words remuneration that Doong has just said. The three of them tried to walk away from the house for a while, and then Rin immediately asked Ari about what just happened. Ari, what's the pay? How much did you promise him? Ari whispers a number that causes all three of them to widen their eyes in unison. What? The doctor is definitely the most shocked one. God knows how much he fears the village chief. Although the village chief is gentle and friendly and frequently looks after the villagers, he is a person who is generally respected. He always radiates an invisible majesty that makes the doctor nervous every time he faces him. Ari, the ringleader of problems, led the mage into the village and informed him of everything. The doctor gets goosebumps just thinking about the village chief's sharp gaze sweeping over him. He hurriedly bombarded Ari with questions. Wait, you're not going to take the village fund that the chief is keeping, aren't you? Ari can only silently nod a few times. Her face is down. Rin has the opportunity to gloat. She laughs at Ari. Haha, that's Ari. That's interesting. There'll be a devil to pay. I'm imagining what the chief will do when he finds out, Ari. The only one who still has a disinterested expression here is Nick. She turns her gaze to glance at everyone and then absently looks away. For someone who doesn't have a definition of money like her, 2 coins or 200 coins are not much of a difference. Holy crap! The village chief will kill us! The doctor once again lamented, even though he tried to reassure himself that the small soul hidden deep in this round body could not be calm. Ari walks behind him, continually encouraging him. It's okay, but it doesn't seem to help. The 4 of them go further away from the house where Doong is residing. So, in the next morning, a young but passionate and sentimental archer girl, a good doctor who has great learning, a young warrior woman with a knack for using whips skillfully, and a little sister who is good at using a sword have gone into the forest very early. Doong feels strange. As a mage, he is only greeted by the four of Ari, and then he goes to battle. The others also do not know his face, but he's sure that people waiting for his triumph will pay him appropriately. He has no idea that everyone here knows that if this journey reaches the chief village's ear, it would never have been allowed. The beginning of the journey is still a peaceful scene. The branches and foliage cover the road, and the rays of the sun crept through the gaps in the leaves, shining down like bright green pillars. On both sides of the road, the dense bush is not very high, and some sounds of unknown animals' names came from these bushes, some long-lasting, some high-pitched, some with a low or hoarse voice. All kinds of sounds blend into one, neither mixed, disordered, but low and high, one after another, like a symphony of nature. Cool breezes blow away the heat in the rainforest, bringing the sense of mud and indescribable plants, along with the wind and even the chirping of birds. Doong distractedly directed his direction to the stream along the path. The clear water kept flowing slowly until the poetic natural picture began to give way to the dense fog. The deeper they went, the more it began to change, an overwhelming feeling of darkness and suffocation rising inside them. The trees on both sides of the road withered as if something had drained their vitality. The trees had only their roots. The thin branches and leaves pointed straight up to the sky like boneless arms rising from hell. The sound of murmuring streams and birds has now completely been replaced by a chilling silence. Occasionally, they would hear the wind stir the leaves or a black shadow running past. The creatures of the jungle were all lurking in the dark, watching the vigilance for the mysterious visitors who first set foot in this place. The further they go into the forest, the harder it was for the light to reach to their footsteps. The surrounding scenery is therefore also bleak. Ari, Rin, Nick, and the doctor are all silent and uneasy. Although the Gailan forest is where they grew up, no one is more familiar with it than they are. But in recent years, those who tried to go deep into the forest have returned full of injuries, making them only dare to go around the forest edge looking for food. This is their first attempt at going so deep. The first time Ari hears her swallow salivate so loud. She turns her gaze to Doong, seeing the mage still keeping a calm face as if this death scene does not affect him at all. Seeing that, Ari suddenly feels so much more confident. At this time, Doong speaks up to break the silence. Why do the deeper you go into the forest, the more trees wither? Ari both walks and leads the horse and turns to answer. Because of the evil vitality of the monster, Pan. The forest used to be lusher and more beautiful than this is now very much. Referring to the beautiful forest in the past, the little fear left in Ari is also dissipated to a frazzle. He does not say anything after listening and just looks around. Looking ahead, he quickens his steps, surpassing everyone, and then he comes to a halt and sits down in front of a thin patch of weak grass. Doong bends down to examine the grass and picks up a flower mixed in it. Although it can grow, when the flower blooms, it is completely colorless. From the petals to the leaves, it is only a color of ash. Doong considers the flowers for a moment before dropping it down to the ground and rejoining the others. Going deeper into the forest, the scenery still hasn't improved. The big trees have also become dry and broken. The green color is less and less, and sometimes there are traces of animal carcasses. The sun has already risen, but the fog shows no sign of abating, and the air around is still filled with a cold and murky feeling. We're currently on our way to the Pan's lair. This is the route they usually go, so it's easy to see them, so be very careful, because the Pans can use sound to call the herd. So if you see one, you must kill it immediately to prevent their signal sound. Ari's voice softly resounds to give Dongdong the instruction, and for the moment, they have entered the area inhabited by the Pans. Look! Nick quietly reminds everyone. Looking in the direction Nick has pointed, a scene of blood and blood emerges clearly through the thick fog. About 10 meters in front of them, two silhouettes are moving very fast. There are two little Pans eating a deer. While in their subconscious, the impression of the Pans as only eating small animals or plants, now the reality in front of them gives them goosebumps. Although the villagers warned about the change and madness of the Pans, they would occasionally encounter a Pan or two running to the edge of the forest. It is the first time seeing the Pans using their sharp, jagged teeth, trying to tear the deer into pieces. Then they scramble to devour every part of the liver and intestines, unwilling to leave anything behind. The whole group stops, and the fishy smell rises through the nose, making the doctor involuntarily feeling nauseous. Are those Pans? Dung immediately wonders as they all huddle against a nearby cliff. Yes, they are. These other wild animals in the forest are about to be wiped out. Ari affirms. She both knits her brows and speaks, looking directly at the monsters. Her voice turns harshly, and she feels quite indignant. Let me wipe them out. They're as easy as cake. Rin leaps up, be eager to emerge from hiding, and dashes up to Pans. Her face is filled with defiance as she spits out the cigarette she is smoking from her mouth. Dung looks at Rin's back. He can't help admiring this girl's determination and courage. She pulls out the whip from her waist, her posture looking very proficient. Then, ahead of the group, Rin rushes over to the Pans. Rin maintains the same expression as before, landing powerfully on the ground from her recent leap, standing directly facing the Pans. These small Pans are aggressive, but their fighting power is not good. It can be difficult for ordinary people, but for those with combat skills like Rin, they are no match. When a Pan is still absorbed in the mouth-watering prey, Rin slides deftly and as gracefully as a cat to turn behind it and swings her whip at it. A move just released, the tip of the whip has tightened the Pan's neck a few rounds. Then she pulls it upside down. While digging in its prey, Pan is suddenly being attacked, gaping its mouth with blood on it, trying to struggle. From the experience of the villagers, after many collisions, they know a bit of the behavior of Pans. What Rin did with Pan made them could not scream as well as control it. The key point is to kill them quickly because Pan can use their voice to call the others. Rin forcefully pulls back the rope, causing Pan to fall backwards, successfully dragging it for a distance. It lifts all four of its legs into the sky, screaming helplessly because its neck is locked. Realizing that its fellow creature is in danger, the remaining Pan accepts to give up his half-eaten food and quickly switches to an attack. It jumps up with its whole body, stretches out its front paws with sharp claws, and its red mouth full of teeth also bares its fangs, all rushing towards Rin and pouncing, treating Rin as new prey. Although Pan suddenly attacks, she already has a precaution. She retracts the whip, darting to one side to evade the Pan's tremendous attack. Boom! A thunderous collision occurs between the Pan's head and the ground, sending rock and soil flying. Blah blah, too slow, Rin teases. No one thinks this Pan is so cunning. Its first attack is just to distract Rin, and when Rin dodges, it immediately hits Rin so hard with its tail, making she can't keep up guard. The tail is a particularly useful weapon for the Pan. With a single tail flick, they can effortlessly knock down their opponents. Originally, Rin had faced the Pans before, but this Pan seemed to be smarter than the previous ones, making her subjective and unable to dodge. The monster slams its tail to her legs. Rin hits the ground, and a numbness spreads to her head from the wound, making her more alert. But this Pan is too cunning. It does not wait for Rin to have time to prepare and immediately rushes to continue to attack Rin. On Ari's side, she is always heading her bow at Rin with fully alert. Feeling unsettled, she immediately lets go of her hand. The arrow gains tremendous momentum through the scales and pierces the monster's head. The monster squeals in pain. In the midst of the precarious situation, Ari quickly lets the bowstring go to save Rin alive. But she knows that this arrow also put them into a worse situation. Rin says, "Damn, it's screaming!" Ari immediately shouts, "Rin, hurry back!" She knows that when the scream of the dying Pan resounds, its fellow creatures will respond all around the forest. Right now, Rin is apparently hurt in Pan's area, and the team has yet to locate Pan's lair, so this fateful battle must be avoided for the time being. Then they flee deep into the forest to seek sanctuary. Both men and horse run as fast as they can, with no intention of stopping or looking behind. The 5 people help each other to escape from the Pans before they can bring their fellow creatures to support. They don't know how long they ran or how far the way is, but only see that the sun will go down soon. When they are sure that danger is behind them, they decide to choose a safe place to rest for the night. Anyway, the group has an injured person and needs to make plans for the next day. Running along a trail deep in Gailan Forest, the Ari group was fortunate to come across a cliff that is somewhat discreet, easy to defend, and hard to be attacked. The place is big enough for horses to rest and a group of 5 people to stay. They decide to light a fire there to scare away wild animals as well as to prepare meals, with the doctor in charge of the food. The light of the fire glows weakly on the faces of the 5 people in the dark night, and a breeze blows the heat to their faces and sprays into every pore on their bodies. Ari sits still, staring at the tiny suit flying into the sky, making a crackling sound. Doong turns to Ari and asks, "You said that the Pans have become so aggressive lately?" "Yes. Pan has ruled this forest for generations. They don't interact with us much, but they had never hurt anyone. A few months ago, a villager got lost in the forest and went missing. Then the Pans started to become aggressive and tried to catch people to eat." Ari replies sadly, her contemplative expression no longer as innocent as when she had just started on the journey. "It could be the process of conversion." Doong thought for a moment and then let out a firm statement. "Process of conversion?" Everyone who hears what he says is extremely doubtful because they are unaware of it. Even the doctor has never heard these words. All of them gape at Doong, and even Nick, who usually ignores everything, cannot stay out. Responding to everyone's gazes, Doong continues to calmly explain. The evil creatures is the lowest form of the mysterious creature. They exist as an individual with intelligence and emotions. The Pans we have met are all in this form. The scene is quiet on 4 sides. Even the crackling of flames became clear. Everyone was so silent, curious about the new knowledge in front of them, all listening attentively, and Doong goes on to say, "Although they have intelligence, they are easily manipulated by the higher ranked ones, namely the Pan's Lord. I think those Pans changed to monsters." When the evil creatures turn into monsters, there are 2 ways. First is self-practice, forging spirit and capacity. This method takes a lot of time, possibly decades. If successful, still retain the inherent instinct and personality. The second type is absorbing force from a certain source of energy that is suitable for the body or possessing the fetishes that can also create transformation. This method is faster but has limited energy sources and is difficult to find the right supply for the essence. Doom pauses for a moment. He scrawled on the ground in the form of a pan with its snout open in attack position. Of course, Doom does not forget to draw a prey next to it, a very valuable prey, human. Doom raised his head, his eyes sliding over the 4 faces looking at him bewildered. He took a quick breath and continued to explain. But there is still another way, also the shortest and most common way. that's eating intelligent species like humans. The evil creature cannibalism will become corrupt and degenerate. They will find ways to get more meat. Although this type has transformed into a monster, since its nature is gone, it will turn into a harmful species. After saying this, Doong turns his head to Ari. Seeing that she is listening intently, he continues. I hypothesized that a few months ago, when their food resources were scarce, someone had accidentally died in the woods, had been accidentally found by the pan. Although human flesh is not in its menu, in this ruthless struggle for survival, the pans need to adapt to survive. When its stomach growled, it ate the corpse. Of course, eat is easier than not to eat. The wood is thrown to bait the fire by Doong, and in an instant, it is easily swallowed by the burning fire. Doong turns his eyes towards the dying fire, unable to hide his wistfulness. He says, After that, the Pan Lord became stronger and began to metabolize. To find more human flesh, it manipulated the small pans to attack the villagers. The more humans it eats, the more transmutation it becomes. He mutters again, turning his eyes to the sky. The new moon already over the top of his head inlays with gentle light on the mountains and forests. As if remembering something, Doong regaining his uplifting mood. Well, stop here. We need to take a rest now. There will be a rotating guard tonight. All of them, who has been listening intently, are suddenly interrupted in confusion. Realized it is quite late at night. Sleeping places are arranged quickly and carefully. Only the doctor is low. He is still overwhelmed, still wondering how such obvious inferences can be thought out by a young man. They have been struggling all day. They should have buried their heads and fallen asleep. But those tired people still can't sleep. They have also crossed mountains and forests many times before, but doing dangerous things like this is still the first time. In this group, except for Doong, this is absolutely a new experience with the other four. That night, they slept very hard. Their sleep is in vigilance, in insecurity, and mixed with an indescribable euphoria.
Và đó là những gì mà bọn mình đem lại cho tất cả các bạn trong buổi công chiếu đầu tiên ngày hôm nay. Hai chương truyện đầu tiên của The Rise of Pan. Câu chuyện đầu tiên nằm trong Kinh Comic. Không biết tất cả mọi người có tò mò hay có cảm thấy hứng thú ngay lúc này không? Về những bí ẩn trong thế giới này, trong khu rừng gai lang, về nhân vật của chúng ta, về Đường, về Ari, về nhóm bạn, về cả ngôi làng thượng thụ và những con pan yêu quái này nữa. Nhưng mà hôm nay thì những gì mà Đường đem đến cho chúng ta cũng như là câu chuyện sẽ tạm dừng ở đây. Những gì hay ho nhất vẫn còn chờ đợi mọi người ở phía sau. Và mình xin chắc chắn rằng tất cả những gì đang ở phía sau sẽ không làm mọi người thất vọng đâu. Mong là sẽ sớm được gặp lại tất cả mọi người trong chuyên mục đọc light novel cùng kênh Comic nha. Và bây giờ thì hẹn gặp lại tất cả mọi người vào lần phát sóng lần sau. See you! Kính chào!